Dr. Stein, given the way our political system works, effectively you could help Donald Trump like Ralph Nader helped George Bush in 2000. How can you sleep at night?
I will have trouble sleeping at night if Donald Trump is elected. I will also have trouble sleeping at night if Hillary Clinton is elected. And as despicable as Donald Trump's words are, I find Hillary Clinton's actions and track record is very troubling. So Donald Trump, bashes immigrants and is a xenophobic and racist loudmouth. But Hillary Clinton, has been promoting these wars that have killed 1 million Black and brown people in Iraq, for example. The Democratic Party has become the party of deportation and detentions and night raids with, millions of people deported under Barack Obama. Some of them include the refugees from Honduras, where Hillary Clinton gave the thumbs up to a coup from which thousands of people have been fleeing who have not been welcomed into this country. And Hillary, in fact, has supported many of the White House policies of deportation and detentions. On, the issue of nuclear war, I am very concerned about trouble breaking out in Syria in this air war that Hillary is threatening to have. So, as disturbing as Donald Trump's talk is, I find Hillary Clinton's track record is actually very much of concern too. This politics of fear that tells you you've got to vote against the person you most dislike or the person you are most afraid of, that politics of fear has a track record. Because a lot of people have been, that's been like the prevailing mythology. You got to vote your fears, not your values. And what has that delivered? All the reasons you're told to vote for the lesser evil, because you didn't want the expanding wars, you didn't want the meltdown of the climate or the Wall Street bailouts or the deportation of immigrants. That's exactly what we've gotten by allowing ourselves to be silenced. So in my view, we need to reject the lesser evil and fight for the greater good, like our lives depend on it, because in fact they do.
Welcome to a very special edition of the Nick and CJ show. I'm one of your hosts. I'm CJ. What's up, Nick?
What's poppin', my friends, my family? This is going to be a fantastic show. And you guys saw the powerful Jill Stein right there. The powerful Jill Stein. After that, that's when there was a point where Jill Stein hit 7% in the polls, right? That's why I want people to keep the foot on the gas, even though Dr. Cornel West got 6%, we got to keep the foot on the gas. But that's exactly why they was afraid of her, and that's why they still smear her to this day, because that answer is perfect. What happens if you get us Donald Trump? Like, I'm worried about Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. That's what people used to tell me. Like, what about the Supreme Court, nigga? I'm like, I don't trust Hillary Clinton with a Supreme Court pick.
And Nick, did you notice the guy's face throughout the entire answer? That guy wasn't a regular person in the audience. You could tell by how his facial reactions to what Jill Stein was saying. He was trying to mask it, but it was a tell. He would get upset, or his eyes would flinch, or she would say something like when she would say something about Hillary Clinton and her warmongering. He would have this tick every time she would make these let's just call them accusations, but we also call them true statements about her being a warmonger. If you notice that, you know that guy was not just a regular guy who was just there, and he was planted there to ask that specific question. The problem is she had a fantastic answer for that establishment question, though.
Yeah, no one can convince me that these people are organic. I see so many of these town halls, 100% plants. Like I remember they had a Trump town hall before, and they had a bunch of people in the audience that was asking them a bunch of shit-lib questions. I'm like, is this a Republican audience or what? But anyway, it's all ridiculous. I guess we got Kshama here. Jill Stein will be joining us here later as well. I consider this such a banger of a show. This is like the pre-show to our labor and organizing summit because we got to start. We got to start with a banger. This is the theme of this week is labor and organizing. We got two amazing organizers and leaders in this space. We have Kshama Sawant, founder of Worker Strike Back. Thank you for joining us today, Kshama. Always great to talk to you.
Thank you for having me. Always good to be here.
Yes, it's always great to have conversations with you because you're one of the people that have been raising the issue of working outside the Democratic Party, and the theme of this is how we get power outside of the two-party system. And there are a lot of people who like Dr. Cornell West right now, a lot of his old professional managerial class friends who are in absolute horror right now because they are they dislike a movement being built outside the Democratic Party. So just for a nice intro, what would you say to these progressives that write these op-eds like why we got to stay in the Democratic Party? Why do you think we should organize our power outside the Democratic Party? What would you say for the people who are skeptical on that?
Well, we've seen what has happened throughout the years since 2016. We of course saw the Donald Trump presidency, and then we saw the Biden presidency after that. And there's a very important thread of analysis to draw from this, which touches on the clip that you just played as well. The completely ahistorical position that some liberal leaders have, that if you want to defeat Donald Trump, then you shouldn't be running. The left shouldn't be running an alternative candidate. We should be putting all our energies into electing Biden, which it's completely ahistorical, and it is devoid of actual analysis because it's not understanding the thread of logic that if we did delve into it, and we should if we're serious, shows you that the rise in right populism, the rise in Trumpism, and the opening that has been created for Trump's agenda very much leads us right back into what the Democratic Party leadership has created. And so we need to draw upon that. But leaving that aside for just a second, if you look at only the Biden presidency, what have we gotten out of it, right? I think first and foremost, especially as we are heading into your labor event, we have to talk about the spectacular betrayal of the railroad workers that the Biden administration carried out. And it's not just about Biden. What we saw was the squad and the so-called Congressional Progressive Caucus, all of them, falling in line to deliver this in the name of, this is where I think the difficulties lie, when people think, well, I agree with many of the things you're saying about the betrayals, but we still have to run in the Democratic Party. We still have to keep faith in the Democratic Party. And this is where the rub lies, is not understanding what it is, what is the actual role played by progressives, let alone somebody like AOC inside the Democratic Party. I think that's the main question here. A lot of people will agree with us. Well, of course, it was shameful that Biden sold out the railroad workers. It's shameful that they have not delivered on $15 an hour, let alone something bigger like Medicare for all or canceling of student debt, taking on Wall Street. Of course, I agree with all of that. But what about the progressives? And I think that is a big part of the response as well. And I think that's where we have to understand that unless we challenge the regime of Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden and all of the power brokers of the Democratic Party who are squarely aligned and with and loyal to Wall Street and the billionaire class, then we can't understand the role that the progressives are playing, which is allowing that agenda to carry on. And what we've seen in the last 4 or 5 years is, for example, as a New York Magazine article said just 2 days ago, that AOC, what she has demonstrated is a half-decade progress, or unfortunately regress, from being an outsider to an establishment insider. I mean, I'm paraphrasing. Those are not the exact words they used. But this is the point, that what we've seen over and over again is the channeling of the progressive agenda at the altar of the Democratic Party's real goal, objective in existence, which is to maintain the status quo in the interests of the ruling elite. And so if we keep doing that again and again, it is going to have the same results again and again and again. And so after 2 times of the Bernie agenda of really having a political revolution against the billionaire class, after a twice demise of that agenda inside the Democratic establishment, inside the Democratic Party, I think it makes sense for us to uh, just step outside of that and really have a serious progress towards building a political organization, alternative political organization for the working class.
Not only are they not challenging the power centers of the Democratic Party, they voted for Hakeem Jeffries as well. So they're voting for the people who are have the power and have the will to destroy their own movement. And CJ, I want to get you in here. I'll pass it to you, but I want to get Shama's reaction to this because you did great coverage on this yesterday, CJ, and you mentioned this as well, Shama. You have
this is the article I was quoting exactly.
Yeah, AOC is just a regular old Democrat now, and I think DSA should expel her. DSA has been extremely weak on the strike-breaking Democrats, the same way that climate activists are being weak on the biggest eco-terrorist of all time, Joe Biden, after he blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. So I take offense because it seems like you guys don't believe in what you're saying. I believe in what I say. But when their actions show they do not. Anything you want to add regarding this article? Because it's even bad when you have I don't know Freddie personally, so I don't want to smear him, but even when you got more establishment types that is writing stuff like they're baffled by how much AOC is sold out. Did that
let me insert a question for you here to kind of to cultivate a question that you're getting to for Shama.
For sure.
What do you think? Or do you think articles like this indicate what do you think it indicates for the progressive Democrat narrative that we are seeing articles like this written in sort of corporate owned media? What is your take on that we're even seeing this at all, even though this critique has been around?
Yeah, you're I think you're getting to something that even I was thinking about ever since I read that article. And then, of course, there was another article in Current Affairs about this as well, which actually mentioned the work we've done in Seattle, Socialist Alternative, which is a very rare thing. Corporate media, not that the article is from corporate media, but, corporate media almost never wants to acknowledge the things we've done. And you're also spot on that the corporate media and the mainstream media does not actually want to acknowledge the things that the left, or at least the sections of the left, have been talking about. So the very fact, as you're saying, the very fact that this article has been published and it's taking up the points in a fairly honest manner itself shows you that there is a whole section of radicalizing young people, especially among the working class, among just ordinary people who are also starting to see this. So when you see articles like this, it's not like they are leading the way. In my view, these articles are not leading the way. They are reflecting a big part of the consciousness that is developing. So that itself is a very important point that you're helping to draw out, because if the left misses that, then it is, and that mistake has happened over and over again. If you don't have your finger on the pulse of consciousness, then you end up squandering opportunities that exist because you don't even see that they exist in the first place. And that's not to be simplistic in any way. Nobody is saying that this is everybody who ever had faith in AOC that's breaking with her. Everybody who was felt played by the Democratic Party is now abandoning the Democratic Party. No, in fact, we will see a big wave of lesser evilism most likely next year as well. But what is our job as those who feel like we have some leadership to offer on the left? Our job is to understand the various trends in consciousness among the working class in America and see where are the opportunities to provide leadership. And so when we say we need to break from the Democratic Party, that the AOC experience, the squad experience shows that it's not working, that they have also engaged in betrayals, giving cover for Biden. That when we say that, we're not imagining, like I'm not imagining that every person who's listening to me agrees with everything I'm saying, but it is our job nonetheless to show the way, and that's what we're doing. But what we have been doing is now being confirmed by even these mainstream articles who are actually going in some ways out on a limb and recognize these things.
So
And I love. Go ahead, Nick. No, go ahead.
I'll pass it right to you, CJ, after this, and I want to show you guys this just as a follow up, and then I'll pass it to you for the next follow up, CJ. Just showing how the progressive movement is essentially the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party now. They're not even doing that head fake where they're gonna put a progressive task force on. They're gonna put they're not even doing that anymore. And I just want to read one quote. I read the headline. This quote. Look at this headline. Top progressives are backing Joe Biden's 2024 campaign, but some activists have reservations. I'm sure they talk about people like you, Kshama, people like us, right? So there's the leadership that's openly selling us out. Meanwhile, we're like, why are you guys endorsing the guy who's supporting the Willow Project, the strike breaker? What is wrong with you people? And this is another article in mainstream media where they're forced to acknowledge it. And these progressives have zero shame. Pramila Jayapal, whose job is to lose on behalf of the left. You guys realize she is a professional loser. That's her job, to lose for the left.
She wins for the ruling class.
Yes.
She provides cover for them. She provides cover for them. I mean, and that's I think that's, sorry to interrupt, but that's where the real difficulties lie, and this is where we should really engage in patient but frank conversations with a lot of the working class. Is, we are not trying to convince Pramila Jayapal. We are trying to help people understand what role these supposed progressives play inside the Democratic Party. The very insidious role they play is they provide cover for the deeds that these politicians, the elite politicians, are engaged in on behalf of the elite, of the billionaires, of the railroad barons, all of them.
Are you telling me that they're not the best among them, Kshama? Come on, we're supposed to take it easy because they're the best we have. Why not go after the neoliberal? Well, look at this quote here to back up what Kshama said. This is beyond parody at this point. She says, when Biden was in, I was like, oh man, because she's talking about how she was lamenting the fact that Sanders and Warren falling short of the presidential primary. But then she said, but I got to tell you, I am a Biden fan now. You guys see what?
Yeah, it's disingenuous. I mean, I have a memory, of I spoke at Bernie Sanders' rallies, presidential campaign rallies, both in 2016 and 2020 out here in the Seattle area, and I remember going to speak at the Tacoma Dome in 2020, and there were all these Democrats, including Pramila Jayapal, and then local Democrats like Teresa Mosqueda, all of them. These are people, I know them very well because, I've been engaged in Seattle politics for the last 10 years. And we have seen firsthand, not only their open betrayals, like, many of them repealed the first Amazon tax we had won in 2018. Although Mosqueda herself voted no against the repeal, but in a way that gave cover to the ones that repealed the tax. But then she led the charge on repealing the pandemic hazard pay that grocery workers had won. But not only their open betrayals, we've also seen their machinations, their maneuvering behind the scenes, which is absolutely vicious and against the working people. It is in favor of landlords and the Chamber of Commerce and so on. So it's a, for me as a socialist, as a Marxist, I have to say it was quite stomach turning to see all of these people making these loud speeches in favor of Bernie Sanders' campaign, knowing full well that Bernie was not going to have a way through the Democratic Party, because we knew the DNC was going to do something or the other. We couldn't have predicted what trick they would play, but we knew they were going to undermine him and never, ever allow his candidacy to be the Democratic candidacy in any way. So what was disingenuous is not only are these politicians, they have their own track record of betraying working people, but they are standing there giving these loud pro-Bernie speeches, knowing full well that Bernie doesn't have a shot in hell in the Democratic Party. The moment Biden comes on the scene, they're going to get on the Biden bandwagon. I mean, that's how disingenuous and dishonest this whole thing is.
Yeah, that's absolutely well said. And I just want to share what happened here because it's an interesting story and how the entire progressive infrastructure, we call them the Bernie industrial complex, whatever you want to call them, that it's completely sold out. And I'm glad to see that Justice Democrats' donations completely dried up because a lot of the grassroots has acknowledged this. But listen to this, because I'm not too familiar with Netroots. And if anyone want to fill me in the comments or otherwise, let me know. But the Netroots Nation, they held progressive events, and even to the point, and they mentioned here in the article, where they actually booed Nancy Pelosi in 2016, and they had Black Lives Matter protesters disrupted a presidential forum. So the idea is that this was a Bernie movement, progressive style forum, usually. Now check this out. It says President Biden was seeming a natural fit for the activists at Netroots Nation, an annual gathering of progressives that was created to harness the online rage over the George W. Bush administration. More recently, there was a movement behind Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, as they mentioned here. But then they mentioned how you had Pramila Jayapal, a lot of progressives, who was explaining how they like Biden and became almost like a pro-Biden prep rally. Because when she said that she's a Biden fan, you know how we recoiled in disgust? When she said it, there was a bunch of cheers at this quote-unquote progressive conference. So you have the entire progressive infrastructure that essentially become Democratic Party cheerleaders, and they completely retreated in the struggle ever since Donald Trump has ended. And now this goes to our thesis, and I'll pass to CJ, that the Democratic Party is where movements go to die. It was Black Lives Matter and the activism in the street that we see with George Floyd. That was killed under the Biden administration. The anti-war movement that developed during my teenage years, during Barack Obama, was killed by the Democrats and Barack Obama. But anyway, CJ, I'll pass to you. I want to get you in here.
Yeah. So, just to kind of piggyback off what we're already kind of talking about, which is we're starting sort of the genesis of this, because I guess that's where we should start, and that's with the Bernie Sanders coalition. Because if we travel back to 2015, 2016, a lot of us, we were all friends. You know, a lot of what we would call the NATO left, the left that's still fine with the Democratic Party, and us people who are more, post-duopoly, we were all holding hands. We were all, chanting together for the Bernie Sanders industrial complex. But it feels like politics or, current events has pushed American population or American political thought more left. It's keep moving left. But the Bernie Sanders industrial complex stayed in one place without moving. So the most radical Bernie Sanders industrial complex back in 2015 is no longer the most radical. They're now to the right of a lot of us. So my question to you, Kshama, is how would you, if we're leading up to the discussion of how to build power, I want to talk about, how the idea even came about of even trying to build power within the Democratic Party. So now we're talking about the Justice Democrat strategy, which was kind of born out of the Bernie Sanders campaign. But how would you describe the strategy of the AOCs, the squad, of getting elected and what they said they were going to do when they were campaigning for their first campaign? Like, how would you describe the Justice Democrat strategy? And we've already talked about how it has been a complete failure. But what do you think the strategy of the Justice Democrats? What sort of damage has it done to the left?
So first of all, as you said, the Justice Democrats, in talking about the fundraising debacle they're having and having to lay off their staff, and I think some really prominent guy from their organization has left, and so they're obviously in decline, and it's also not surprising that that's happening, because the whole point, at least as far as the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of working people who might have been interested in the Justice Democrats project, was to provide some sort of leadership on the left within the Democratic Party. I mean, obviously, we have disagreement about trying to do it within the Democratic Party, but I think there were many genuine people who had faith in. I'm talking about ordinary people. I'm not talking about
Right.
either the elected officials or the top bureaucrats of any of these outfits. But my point is that the idea behind such projects like the Justice Democrats was a genuine searching for an alternative to the corporate politics that is on offer from the Democratic Party. But what we're seeing is that that approach of just trying to do it in a very minimal sense, and most importantly from inside the Democratic Party, is not working. I mean, AOC is their flagship candidate, and look where she is. She unfortunately, even Bernie, as I said before, it's really unfortunate and shameful that he endorsed Biden within hours of Biden announcing his presidential campaign, and we've now seen AOC also endorse him, without any demands, without any criticism of where things are. And of course, how can she? Because she's been complicit. She's been party to a lot of what has happened in Washington, D.C. And so I think what our job is on the left is to explain that the reason the Justice Democrats have experienced this debacle is not about any specific organizational detail, while there may be such things. It's about the whole idea, the whole concept that this can be done in this way. It can't be done in this way. And that is why, I think one of the most important points we have to make, and Socialist Alternative and I are certainly making this point even in our inaugural article about the Cornell West campaign, is that one of the things that the Cornell West campaign had, the potential aspects of potential it has. I'm not saying that it's a given. We have to fight to make it happen, but the potential it has is the potential that existed actually when Bernie ran in 2016 as well, but didn't happen. And most predominantly because he didn't agree with us at all on this question, is can we build an independent political organization for the working class coming out of this campaign? That is the most important question that comes to our mind in relation to the Cornel West campaign. So that means both what is the strategy we use to run this campaign, and also what is the vision we are providing for after that campaign ends. That has be those two questions have to be the predominant questions. And already we've seen how much impact it has. The hunger for this type of politics is so huge. It is not as Anderson Cooper or whoever else in the mainstream media might want to believe and might claim that it's some fringe lefty podcast. No, the hunger for
Yeah.
an alternative to the dangerous right populism of Donald Trump, and also the extremely reactionary politics of DeSantis or anyone else from the Republican Party, and the corporate agenda of the Biden regime and the Democratic Party, the hunger for an alternative to both these two things is wide, and it's massive, and it runs deep. And you can see the examples of what I'm saying. Within 2 weeks of Cornel West announcing his candidacy, 19 million people had viewed his campaign, video announcement video.
Wow.
Those are huge numbers. I mean, I don't know. I mean, somebody with not even a modicum of honesty would not, only such a person would not admit what that represents. I mean, this is huge. So the potential is really big. But whether the potential is realized or not, that's the question for the left.
Yeah, a lot of people got to realize that the Justice Democrats was also are also fraudulent, because based on what they told us, and Savvy Sabs, our revolutionary blackout sister, she does a good job highlighting this. Part of the Justice Democrat plan was to make third parties and independent candidates more viable. The Justice Democrat was supposed to be a movement that promoted third parties and wide-scale electoral reform, because there's no reason to engage in electoral politics without that being your primary goal, because we know the system is rigged. And this is the receipt where they said they had to make an effort to make third-party and independent candidates more viable. Now, this is why I say there should be a lot more anger at just a Democrat organization, a lot of the progressives, because they committed fraud on the working class. Like, so it's not like the working class, and this is something I've been trying to learn to forgive myself more, right, for falling for this. Because I'm like, how can you fall for AOC? How we fall for AOC and Bernie? It wasn't that we was 100% full. I mean, we could have foolish intentions, but we wasn't 100% fools, because a lot of these people were saying stuff like, we need to be one-term Congress people. That what AOC was saying.
Yes, that's
it's not
true.
like we was misguided. These people committed fraud on us. So we need to forgive us more and be more angry at them. That's why I kind of laughed. Go ahead, Kshama. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, no, absolutely. It would be wrong of us to be angry at or criticize or condescend to ordinary people who put their faith in the Bernie campaign. Absolutely not. That was not wrong at all. And Socialist Alternative's approach to the Bernie campaign is actually a good example of how I think left leadership should be provided, is in the sense that we went all in for Bernie's campaign. We campaigned for him wherever we have our members. And we were emphatic about our support for his campaign agenda, as I said, for taxing Wall Street, for Medicare for all, canceling student debt, all of that. But we were also very clear that there is no way that the Democratic establishment would allow this, the DNC would allow this agenda to dominate in their party, that you cannot, one of the things we said is you cannot have a political revolution against the billionaire class from inside a party that is controlled by those very same powerful individuals. And so, and their agenda, and with the political representatives doggedly representing their interests, the interests of the wealthy. And so we were also very clear about that at that same moment. So I think that's the kind of clarity and honesty we need on the left. It's not very much on offer, unfortunately. And one of the things, I think the comment that you showed from Sabi, I think that also reminds us a very important component of what we are talking about. When we say we need a new political organization, a new political party for the working class, we are also talking about a political organization that is that offers serious analysis and organizational methods that not only go that not only outlast electoral campaigns, but go well beyond electoral politics in the first place. That we're not talking about an organization that is simply an electoral machine, except it's separate from the Democratic Party and it's slightly better with better demands. And yes, all of that would be good, but we're not talking about something limited like that. We're talking about something really important that is a sore necessity. I mean, just to give you an illustration of why such an organization is needed, an organization that is, of course, runs candidates, holds those candidates accountable, unlike the way DSA leadership has not been able to hold the squad accountable. Yes, all of that is true. And it should be a democratic organization where who runs, who the candidate is, what the campaign program is, which elections we should run in, all of that is democratically decided by the membership through debate and discussion. But aside from that, or in addition to that, it should be an organization that is immersed in the struggles of the working class, struggles of people. So just to give a very important illustration, inside the labor movement, what are we seeing? We are seeing a real hunger for militancy and class struggle unionism, but that is not really on offer from the labor leadership. And so where do these rank and file go? What is the organizing on offer for them? So if you're one Teamster somewhere who wants a better contract, or if you're a Starbucks worker who is trying to understand what happened, what is the debacle of this whole unionizing drive, how can we win power for workers, how can we win union drives, how can we win fighting contracts, how can we go on strike, how should these strikes be extremely well prepared? None of these questions are actually being discussed by big sections of the labor leadership, because they are, for decades have been married to what I would call business unionism. And so for all of these questions to be discussed in real depth, where union members and non-union workers can come together and discuss and find a political home for themselves, all of this is, this is what we're talking about when we say a new political organization. Not just
right. I get what you're saying. Not just one politically for voting, but it includes the workplace. Also, now I want to go back to one of the things Nick had said Earlier, I'm losing my train of thought. You said immersed in it. But let me ask you this other question, because what we also have been talking about is what the Justice Democrats promised and what they actually delivered. So in what you were saying, Nick, about Sabi's tweet, you know what that tells me? That tells me that the Justice Democrat, whoever created this thing, they knew at that time what was the right strategy, and then it evolved into something else. Because what are some of the things they were talking about? They're talking about being militant. They're talking about building up a third party movement at the same time.
And
So
remember,
they
forced to vote
knew
was
at
their
that
idea.
time what to do. Go ahead.
And CJ, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'll pass it back to you, but forced to vote was also their idea. One of the original ideas of the Justice Democrats were having a progressive organization that is willing to deny people like Nancy Pelosi positions if they don't get their idea. It's literally in the DSA handbook. And when they rejected that, that was why many people jumped off the wagon then, because if you abandon this core principle, that means you already sold out. Like, there's not no such thing as like halfway selling out. But sorry, go ahead, CJ. You can finish your thought.
No, that is exactly the point that I'm making. So what happened to the Justice Democrats? How do you go from having these sort of thresholds to meet in order for this idea to sort of move forward, to it gradually becoming and morphing into something else, to where now they're taking donations from people that they didn't say they were going to take donations? They're not being sort of adversarial, and they say this. They want to cozy up to the Democratic leadership in hopes that, you know, some sort of progressive policy will have be brought to light, when it's never the case. So let me look at the question I have. So the question I have for here is, do you get a sense of all of these progressive failures that has happened? Do you get a sense that a lot of people on the left are just depleted, are just sort of tuned out of politics, where under normal circumstances, even if you're moving incrementally, they would stay sort of engaged? But I'm getting the sense that there's a lot of it's a difference in when we're talking about people in the Democratic Party and who's supporting them. There's like a difference. There's less enthusiasm. There's less people buying into the progressive Democrat strategy. So again, do you think? Where's that question at? Do you think that the progressive movement, I'm talking about the rank and file, do you get the sense that they're sort of depleted, that they're sort of disengaged? Kshama.
Yeah, I think what is true, absolutely, and you alluded to this, CJ, is that there is much less enthusiasm for the Democratic Party than there might have been several years ago. That's for sure, especially for the hundreds of thousands, not to mention probably millions of people who were really excited by the Bernie campaign and saw what happened both times, what the DNC did to his campaign. They are obviously very disenchanted. Many people probably didn't even vote in the election. Some of them ended up probably, some of the people who would have voted for Biden then ended up voting for Trump. And in fact, statistically, now we know, and even some mainstream commentators, political pundits are admitting that Bernie would have won. So in that sense, yes, people are much less enthusiastic. In fact, we have seen now pretty deadly polls of the proportions of people who are willing to or excited about or would, sorry, not excited, but open to voting independent. 45% of Democrats saying they're open to voting independent. That's pretty, I mean, if you look at a party that has been in existence for all these years, has all this power, for them to be in this situation is, if they were in any way genuine, for them, it would be a real moment of realization that, oh, we're obviously not getting it right as far as working people are concerned. But are people checked out in the sense that if there was a fight, they wouldn't be excited by it and be activated by it? No, I don't think so. I mean, obviously, there are periods of lulls in social movements and all of that. And so I think we are seeing a little bit of that period, but I don't think that it's in any way permanent or in any way entrenched, you know. So what has happened though, and this is where we have to have a sobering analysis. What has happened is that uh, on every avenue, working people and young people are recognizing that they have been let down. I mean, they poured their hearts into the Bernie campaign. They had all this faith in AOC, and you're totally right, Nick, CJ. I mean, they actually made promises that they have betrayed. You know, AOC did say that, oh, so what if you're a one-term congresswoman? You know, what matters is what you do in your one term. She also said in 2020, not that long ago, she said, in any other country, Biden and I would not be in the same party. But this is the same AOC who, instead of challenging Nancy Pelosi, went to calling her mama bear. And she, she has given Biden cover and also gone along with the railroad worker betrayal. There's breaking of the strike, and then ended up actually the most astounding thing is then actually blaming the worker leaders, saying, they wanted me to do this. Like, are you kidding me? So what working people are seeing is feeling blocked on every avenue. They tried out the electoral avenue. That hasn't worked for actually bringing about any change, not even $15 an hour being one, nothing really substantial being one. There was also a massive outpouring in the BLM movement, but then there was a whole series of betrayals by the BLM misleaders, as I would call them. And so there's been block after block, obstacle after obstacle for working people. So what I would characterize this as, yes, there has been a scattering of people's political excitement, ordinary people's political excitement. Some of them are disenchanted, but on the whole, the real thing that's missing is the leadership that could actually channel these the millions of people into social and labor struggle. That's what's missing, not so much whether working people are ready to fight back or not, which I believe is absolutely still true.
I actually concur with that. Is that, and I think you spoke to this earlier, that the Cornell West campaign could be that campaign that sort of invigorates those that are sort of disenfranchised or disenchanted, as you said earlier. But our second guest is here, so let's go ahead and bring in our second guest, and that is Dr. Jill Stein. How are you doing today?
Great. Sorry for the delay. Sorry. Really glad to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate
no
having
worries.
you on.
Go
This
ahead,
is a fantastic panel, and we was having a spirited conversation about the failure of the strategy of movement building within the Democratic Party, and that's what the discussion led to. And I asked Kshama in the beginning, what would you say to people, because you like the number one villain to the Democrats, because they, especially progressives and all these people who advocate going to the Democratic Party. So what would you say to people who are progressive minded, but they said that we should organize within the Democratic Party, that we should focus within the two-party system? What would you say to those people?
So is that Kshama continuing, or do you want me to jump in here?
I want to get you in, Dr. Stein. I want to get your opinion on people that say that.
Yeah, I mean, to put it bluntly, don't waste your time. I mean, I think we've just seen confirmed over and over again that you can't have a revolution in a counter-revolutionary party, and you will be thwarted at every turn. It would be hard, I think impossible, to do better than what was done in the Sanders campaign, really in 2016, and then again in 2020, in terms of what can be done in the Democratic Party. Volunteers, money, message, field. This was as good a campaign as one can run, and he had a victory basically snatched away from him repeatedly in a rigged election that was admittedly rigged by higher ups in the Democratic Party, by their court case where they were sued at one point for basically vote rigging, and it was established that no, it's a business or a corporation or whatever it is, and that they are not accountable to voters. So in every way imaginable, Sanders did the right thing and was shut down at every turn. And where did that get us? And that's kind of like the ultimate statement about running within the Democratic Party, because when your campaign is shut down, you're left with nothing. And, you've built a castle in the sand, it washes away, it's over and done with. You have some token appointment, like Bernie Sanders being appointed to head the budget committee for all the good that did him. And, did the movement? Really nothing. It was really, everybody got sheepdog back into this predator party. And that's where they are. And I'll just add, listening to the tail end of your conversation there, at every turn, people have been really pummeled by the Democratic Party. The young people who were so enthusiastic in the climate movement and the climate justice movement that got funneled into, basically into the Democratic Party and became a kind of AstroTurf grassroots group that was funded by I don't know who, but they were certainly not going to hear anything outside of the Democratic Party. We kept trying to get these young people with the Sunrise Movement to at least consider candidates that were opponents to the Democrats. If you want to move the Democrats, you have to threaten the Democrats, and they wouldn't do it. They didn't want to be disloyal to their funders or their, whatever they were, their leaders, their great leaders. And where are they now? Biden is really leading the assault on the climate with, his giveaways to the Mountain Pipeline, the Willow Project, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is supposed to be the climate bill. It's really a fossil fuels first bill, and just like pull the wool over your eyes when you see what actually goes on there. You cannot create any kind of major renewable clean energy project until you have basically squandered 2 million acres of public lands and 60 million acres of offshore waters for the purpose of fossil fuels or nuclear. You have to do a lot of bad stuff before it begins to move forward at all on fossil fuels. It's really, that bill is a complete outrage, and it's really kind of a microcosm of the best you can expect from the Democratic Party. Things are just falling apart. Or look at, for the peace movement, the valiant progressive caucus that finally, after months, dared to, hand wring and suggest diplomacy in Ukraine. They wound up having to actually retract even that incredibly weak letter that they wrote. So what you see is what you get. Forget the lesser evil. They are not the lesser evil. The Democrats are leading the charge on war, on censorship. They have abandoned their commitments on healthcare, on Medicare for all, even on pharmaceuticals. What they exclaim and pat themselves on the back, their great pharmaceutical achievement is what? To negotiate 10 out of thousands of pharmaceuticals. They're going to negotiate 10 in 2026. Hello, who are you kidding here? It's like you have to be really brain dead or on the payroll somehow, benefiting to buy into the incredibly pathetic propaganda campaigns being waged by the Democratic Party. So, my message is the lesser evil is over. Let's get on with the greater good. Let's do that.
Let me interject this here. It feels like, and I say this all the time with Nick, it feels like we're in a perfect sort of storm moment for building power outside.
Yeah.
Because if you just talk about the last, how long has the pandemic been going on? 3 years. If you just talk about this last 3 or 4 years, it just seems like the temperature has been turned up, and it's just things are falling into place to make people have this hunger that you spoke to earlier, Kshama. So you have the pandemic, you have the inflation, you have the fear of Donald Trump, you have Russiagate, you have, you know, breaking the strike, you have all the failures of the Democratic progressive sort of a narrative, and then enters Dr. Cornell West. And it feels like he could be, or I should say the campaign could be, it feels perfect for this moment. First, let me say that it feels perfect for this moment. You know, it's very hard for people to attack him, even in corporate media. It's really not a real strong attack line. As Kshama, as you mentioned earlier, people are really hungry for something outside of the red-blue game. So to me, this feels like a perfect storm for what we're talking about today, which is building power outside of the red, blue team. So then that begs the question: how do we use a campaign like the Dr. West campaign to facilitate this sort of moving, this sort of shifting, this sort of building of power? I'll start with you, Kshama, and then I'll go to you, Dr. Stein, for your response to that question.
I think, first of all, yes, as you said, there is something in the air. This is a really important moment, and there is all of that potential, as we were discussing earlier. And in order to really make the most of this campaign, and before I say that, I should also say, I think, yes, it is about the campaign, and that means all of us really, and the campaign strategy organization. Of course, Jill, you're part of that, and I'm eager to hear more about that. But at the same time, it's also Cornell. I mean, it's important that we have somebody like Cornel West, who's clearly genuine. And as you alluded to this, CJ, they are attacking him. The corporate media, the Democrats are attacking him every which way possible, which of course was we knew that was going to happen. But it's also so important that we have somebody like him as the candidate for the campaign, because he is genuine. He has a decades long track record of standing up for, genuinely standing up for social and economic justice. And so it's no coincidence that this campaign is raising many of the same demands that Bernie had raised, which we strongly agree with. But in order for all of this potential to be realized, I think, as I was alluding to earlier, two things. One is what we do in this campaign is important, and what vision we hold out for after the campaign. Both those questions are important. And I think one of the obviously the city council campaigns we have run are much smaller in scale than a presidential campaign. That is a massive undertaking. We have no illusions about that. But at the same time, I think the fact that we have been able to win, Socialist Alternative and I, we've been able to win 4 campaigns, and we're going to be leaving in December undefeated. And we have won so many victories along the way, which has obviously has been the bedrock of our every subsequent elections, is that we have proven that we can win. I think offers some ideas. And one idea I wanted to throw out there. Obviously, there's a lot more to be said about this. But just one for now is one of the ways in which we were able to win our election campaigns, despite the massive opposition to us, was to recognize that we have to organize the rank and file on many different fronts in a very explicit way, to help them to stand up to their own leaders who are not on our side. And a very specific example of what I'm saying is how we built what we call Labor for Sawant in every election campaign, because in virtually every, except for one in 2015, every election campaign, what we've seen is, except for a few left union leaders, the vast majority of the union leadership was opposed to us. They tail end the Democratic establishment. Unfortunately, that's the truth. They don't represent the interests of their members, and this is basically very big aspect of business unionism. They believe that they can collaborate with the bosses. They have a very close relationship with the Democratic establishment in the city. That's true nationally as well. And so we would not have won any of our election campaigns, let alone other victories that we won, had we not had a very conscious and explicit strategy to organize rank and file union members to stand up to what the union leadership was presenting. So even in the unions that ended up endorsing our opponents, we had big sections of the rank and file that were part of the Labor for Sawant contingent, which ended up playing a very important role in winning our election. So that's just one aspect of, I think, what we need to do, obviously on a much bigger scale. We need a Labor for Cornell West kind of thing that can really bring this together.
That is actually a fantastic idea that I don't know if I had put that together in that way. And let's give you the opportunity also, Dr. Stein. What say you about this being a perfect sort of storm moment for a candidacy or a campaign like a Cornell West campaign? And how do we use, or how do we facilitate this campaign being the vehicle of that building of power outside of the duopoly?
Yeah. So, first, totally, this is that perfect storm. And working people are watching their lives fall apart. Student debt, medical debt, evictions, just skyrocketing rents. 40%, I think, of renters are stressed, are financially stressed and meet that criteria for, not being able to afford their housing. And this is commonplace. 500,000 people on the streets every night who are basically houseless. Healthcare, 70,000 people practically dying every year for lack of what every other developed nation around the world is providing as a matter of right. You can just rattle off the statistics one by one. 100 million people in medical debt. People cannot survive. 60-some% who say they are living paycheck to paycheck. It's just, the numbers are staggering. Recently, there was a report that the fourth leading cause of death in the U.S. is poverty. It's just incredible. And here we are spending $115 billion for all sorts of things in Ukraine. Why are we spending this money in Ukraine when people are falling like flies right here in this country? Not to mention that over 50% of our budget is funding the military, which is not making anybody safer or more secure or advancing the cause of democracy. We have utter system failure across the board, including the really collapse of any semblance of democracy and the complete hijack of our political system by a predatory, rapacious oligarchy. That's how the system works. We need a very broad agenda to reclaim this promise of democracy and the things that make our lives possible. We deserve to survive. We deserve to thrive. And, to settle for anything less is ridiculous. And the propaganda being pushed now out of the Democrats and the Republicans in their own way, but especially the Democrats who are saying that Cornell is a spoiler, Dr. West is a spoiler. Spoiling what exactly? Spoiling your, old white guy monopoly on political power. That's what they're screaming about and shrieking about through a media that has lost all credibility anyhow. So who even cares? Personally, I feel like this onslaught of smears, I'm not inclined to even pay very much attention to it because it's such nonsense and it's coming from a completely discredited source. I think it's something like 14, 16% now, who believe in legacy media and the TV. It's let them scream, let them whine, let them do their thing. It's really kind of like water rolling off our backs. Because what is being spoiled is life. And the potential to survive. And I feel like we need to stay on message and attack that and not worry about rebutting the nonsense that's being spouted by these whiners, these old guy whiners who are watching their power kind of slide through their fingers. And, in terms of, how do we move here for the long haul? I completely agree with what with what Kshama said, this is really all about organizing in each of the sectors, and that's how I at least think about the campaign, is that we have critical messages that are intended to support and strengthen the fight that the grassroots is already engaged in. It's like the rebellion is in full swing and it's happening in each sector. And when it comes to elections, you have this usual takeover by the usual suspects who get, propelled and amplified in the corporate media. But what really matters here is the grassroots stuff, and that 40% who's not bothering to vote. That's who we're talking to. And, that's where the real power lies. And the numbers of people who are not voting is almost enough to win the election. Add that to some of these, huge proportions of Democrats and Republicans who are ready to vote third party, who basically share, the priorities of the really true grassroots progressive agenda for healthcare as a human right, affordable housing as a human right, to make public higher education free and abolish student debt and medical debt, and ensure the rights of workers to strong unions that actually represent them, and to a true living wage, whatever that would be now, $24 per hour. That's what we're talking about. And, I just thank our lucky stars that Cornell has stepped forward, and he's, you don't have to work with this candidate about what is his message, because he's been doing this really for all of his life. He's current, he's on top of it. He has to get used to like how campaigns work a little bit, because there's, this is a whole new world. And I know from having done this myself back in the year 2002, where I jumped into a gubernatorial campaign, having absolutely no idea what was involved and how you do this and how you work with a team of people who have kind of, sort of a list of political things that you have to do. If you're going to play this game, you have to play the game and win the game, Otherwise, you're going to be torn apart by the game and you will fail at the game. It's not easy to get on the ballot, and there are a lot of things we have to do in certain time, and it doesn't make any sense whatsoever to people who haven't been through this. So there's a lot of dialogue we have to have. Cornell has been just flat out doing basically 24/7 interviews.
Yeah.
He really prioritizes the grassroots, which is so wonderful. His whole thing is about empowering grassroots groups and frontline communities. So he's got all the right instincts. He's got all the right message. And, he's creating a wave, even without a campaign having been organized behind him, because we just inherited this. Usually you prepare a campaign for months in advance, and you have your campaign plan, what your messages are. You've got your emergency response team to your smears. You have your ballot access stuff lined up. You have your staff. We had none of that. When we saw that interview with Amy Goodman on a Wednesday, he launched on Monday. We saw that on Wednesday and said, oh no, this is not going to work. We had our conversation. I was texting with Chris when he was at the Workers Strike Back in New York, and we were saying, yeah, we got to talk to Cornell. We talked to Cornell the next day, and it was a done deal. But then I realized, okay, now who's going to run this campaign? Which is how I got sort of dragged into something that I have not, been properly prepared for. But probably as prepared as anybody in the Green Party, because.
Yeah, but you stepped up though. You stepped up. And
you're not kidding. Yeah. I was not going to let this go down. There was just no way in hell I was going to let that happen.
And you see,
it's so funny. No, it's so funny that you were having the same sort of thought process when you saw the interview on Democracy Now! Like, oh no, we can't let this go by. We were having the same conversations here on RBN. Nick, if you remember, it was one of the post-duopoly shows, and we had our brothers from Heartlands Media and Do Dissidents, and we were saying, listen, we're giving him 90 days to change course from the People's Party, because this is a real opportunity to
Yeah.
build power. We didn't say get elected. We said this is a real opportunity
that's
to
right.
shift people out of the Democratic Party. But go ahead, Nick. You were going to chime in with something there. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was about to say earlier. I remember as soon as Jill Stein and Dr. Cornell West hooked up, there was an article in CNN where they was panicking, but they said Jill Stein is back, and now you guys see why they're terrified of that, right? Now I said it many times. I still have the belief. I'm not too invested into the electoral strategy because I don't think that is going to lead to revolution and social change. But just imagine if we have 5% of the population on board with our movement.
Yeah.
How much of the population does they say that you need to enact social change? You only need around 3 to 5% of the population to enact change. I mean, people who are activated, ready to hit the streets, the people who are vibing with your message, right? So imagine if we get 5%, get federal funding, and then we got 5% of the people that is down for the overall movement that should be building based on mutual aid, labor organizing, and such.
Yeah.
And then let me get ambitious here. What if we get 15%?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, oh, well, we're going to change the rules and deny you the debate because the idea is you get 50%, you get to the debates. And we know they're not going to let them, but that's the win itself. The headline that they denied Dr. Cornel West from the debate. And also the biggest win is we got 15%. And now if we got 15% of people on board for a movement, that is where things get fucking real. That's where things gets real. That's why my strategy, at least I'm speaking for myself, is to use any opportunity we can to build this movement. So as people pay attention to electoral politics, people who love Dr. Cornel West, they love the Green Party and the opportunity to vote for someone other than Donald Trump and Joe Biden. You take that opportunity to radicalize them and say, look, what are you doing? What can we do to not only help the candidacy of Dr. Cornel West, but in your local life? What can you do? Like, we're not relying on Dr. Cornel West as a savior. It's the overall movement building strategy that you guys are kind of invested in. Any thoughts on that, Dr.
It
Stein?
sounds like you're mixing, alluding to what Kshama Sawant said earlier, and it's a question I want to kind of follow up for everybody to kind of address, and that is, how do we mix labor? You were speaking to Kshama, and I'll let you answer first. And maybe you can bring up what we're talking about in the private chat here about the rent control bill. I can't remember, but how do we build sort of within the campaign, because you have done this with your campaigns, you for re-election, your campaign, but it's built against a movement that doesn't stop in November when you're elected. It continues. So how do we do something like that? And we're talking about people who they've been in the blue-red game. This is a foreign concept to you. You get what I'm saying? Because you just think, it's a debate, you watch it, some popcorn, you look at some commercials, some Northrop Grumman commercials, and then you just go into the voting booth, and then that's it. And then that's it. It's magic happens. But that's not the case, Kshama. So how do we pair that labor sort of movement with the campaign? How did you do it? How did you base your campaigns on more movement building than the actual your candidacy?
Yeah, I'd love to share more, and also if rent control, that's a battle that is actually happening right now. The final vote is going to happen on Tuesday, and I really want to share with your listeners because it's progressive Democrats who are refusing to vote in favor of it, not to mention the conservative Democrats. So yeah, I mean, Jill read out the litany of statistics that I don't want to repeat, but that's how bad the crisis is. People are literally losing their lives because of homelessness, which is very much linked with skyrocketing rents. And you have self-described progressive and labor Democrats who are one who already voted no in committee, and the other, Mosqueda, the one I mentioned earlier, she's not even going to show up. She's taken a leave of absence for that day, which is, I mean, all of this is showing you that the whole idea of progressive Democrats standing up for us, I mean, that is just been so disproven. But all of this also goes back, I mean, it's sort of both the points that both Nick and CJ, both the points that you just raised are linked. I mean, Nick was talking about how, just imagine what if it was 15%. I mean, I think this is the question you raised about 15%, which I think is, there is potential for that, is very much linked with movement building and organizing, because Look at how the establishment is attacking Cornell West right now. The 15% hasn't happened yet. The campaign is just getting off the ground. Jill just shared about, all the building blocks that they're putting together. And already you are seeing a major freak out from the establishment. And they are
Mhm.
correct. I mean, it's morally repugnant, but my point is they are correct to be worried, because people are angry and fed up and frustrated and are looking for an alternative. And this is what the Biden campaign and the Democrats, the DNC, is worried about. And so they are going all out against him. Imagine what they will do if the support for Cornel West for president goes up to something like 15%. So this is what I'm
Mm.
saying. We cannot make that kind of momentum while overcoming the attacks from the ruling class without having a broad base, without the campaign having this kind of broad base, because it is the best defense is the offensive that we can have with millions of people energized behind this campaign. And that is exactly I don't want to use the word formula, but that is exactly the approach, the political strategy that we have used over and over again, where the only defense we've had is not relying on, doing the opposite of relying on personalities or personal agenda, or making it about yourself. It's the opposite of that, which is broadening it out in a way that a whole um, a whole section of the rank and file is activated around concrete demands, where they see that this is their campaign, and it's not in service of getting a person elected. It's in service of building real working class power, winning things like the $15 an hour, the first campaign that we won in 2013. We would not have won that campaign had we not made $15 an hour, tax the rich, and rent control as our banner, and we led with $15 an hour. And it was that moment, so understanding which demands to highlight is also very important. So it's really important that Cornel West campaign already is highlighting many of those demands, like Medicare for all. And I would say that it's really important to get that out there, that message out there every single moment. I mean, concretely, one of the things Bernie did right was he had his stump speech. He talked about $15 an hour, Medicare for all, canceling student debt, taxing Wall Street. Everywhere he went, day after day, and the establishment media, the Rachel Maddow and whoever, they made fun of him. They mocked him for that, for repeating the same thing. But that was dead right. That is what we need our campaigns to do, like to really hit the message, because that message is what people are looking for. Why should I, as a working person in Kentucky or West Virginia, get involved with this campaign? Maybe I voted for Trump in the last election, but that's only because I'm frustrated as hell, not because I'm some outright reactionary and right-wing person. Why should I be invested in this campaign? So concretely, having the program which Cornell does have and the campaign does have, but hitting that everywhere you go, in order to really begin building a base. I think that is part of what we did, and without which we would not have succeeded. And and then in addition to that, of course, having actual organizing, as I said, through we even had faith communities for someone or something like that, where we uh,
Mm.
where we had people starting points on their journey for social and economic justice might be different, but our message was, and we never strayed away from this message, our message was, all these evils that you are struggling against, that you are angry about, you want to fight against, they stem from the system of capitalism. And so we need to unite. And it's not that everybody liked hearing that, not everybody who voted for us is anti-capitalist, but they understood that we had a genuine analysis. Whether or not they agreed with every aspect of the analysis, they understood that
Mm.
we were genuine and that we wanted to fight. And so that fighting message really brought people together.
Absolutely. And did
I
you?
have
I couldn't tell if you were going to chime in. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Dr. Stein, do you have anything you want to chime in? I have a section I want to get to regarding labor, because I want to make sure I ask Shama and Stein about the upcoming labor actions, and also want to get Shama in here to talk about her rent control, because housing is important issue that I focus on a lot. I organized and help Casey tenants whenever I can. So I love the fact that you are pushing rent control and looking at housing first. But Dr. Stein, was there anything else you want to add regarding the last subject before I move on to the next topic?
Yeah, so I'll just say a couple of things. Totally agree, with Kshama that you need to have your agenda, you need to have your stump speech, and you need to hit it over and over and over. And every time you have, mainstream media, you need to just use that. You need to use the stump and get your message out. And, Cornell has not been a candidate before. And, he has these very heartfelt, wonderful, genuine conversations that really touch people, and that have given him an incredible open door to going to talk to lots of media people that other, radical progressives wouldn't get to talk to. So at any rate, he's kind of beginning to learn some of the ropes about what you need to do. And as a campaign, as a national campaign, you not only have your stump speech, but you got to go. You've got to go to the front line of that struggle. Like in our campaign in 2016, we were at the evictions, we were getting arrested at the evictions or at the protests at the banks. And we were at the Standing Rock, and you want to go where the fight is happening and really dramatic, and it just resonates with people in a big way. And we haven't really begun to put that schedule together, but that's really critical. You have to do that as a campaign. You have to be there. You have to show up. And the last thing, about building the movement is that Cornell is, Dr. West, I should say, is not really by origin a political animal. So what he's doing instinctively is building the movement. Every time he goes to talk to someone, it's to help build their movement. So, he's totally on the right track to start with. It's all about movement building. And, his part of the learning curve is like, how do you also be a candidate? But that will be almost like an afterthought for him. His real drive, is to build the movement. So we can really, I think we can just, I'm so, just ecstatic and very excited about how this process is rolling out, because he has all the right instincts for this moment. So,
let me say, we're gonna talk about a couple of other things, but we're not done with the building movement part. We're gonna double back hopefully at the end. But let me just say this: if I had to make a list, Nick, of people if we had to make a list, we said, man, can we think of a group of people we would like to assemble to kind of like build this movement? Let me tell you, if it would not be Ajamu, Kshama, Dr. Jill Stein, Chris Hedges, and Cornell West, you tell me that would not be the exact list.
If you told me that last year, I was like, there's no way. If you told me last year that Avengers like team was gonna form.
And can I add to that?
This feels like Voltron. This feels like Voltron, like
guys,
a literal coming together of an all-star team. And that's why I said this feels so different. This feels like a real opportunity for us to actually step outside of the red, blue, and build something real. Go ahead, Dr.
And I just want to add to that team, Chris Hedges' illustrator, Mr. Fish. And I don't know if you're familiar with what he does, but it's, he's been putting out these illustrations that get snatched up and suddenly they're on t-shirts being sold on Amazon. Wow. So there's this whole art dimension and pending videos and, all sorts of street art in the works that really helps, add a whole other dimension of power to this movement, which resonates, I think, with Dr. West's own, speaking the language of music and jazz, which is very much a part of his life and adds a whole lot of power. And I think adds a whole other dimension of communications here, because a lot of people just don't speak political language, but they do speak the language of art. And so that's coming too. And it's like, it's like one little miracle after another that keeps happening to make this perfect storm ever more perfect. It's just really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to show this because you mentioned your rate control project, Kshama, and this is one of the headlines I pulled up, it says Kshama Sawant sponsoring rent control trigger law in Seattle. And you mentioned that the voting is on Tuesday. Is there any other information that people can know how they can help raise awareness? Is there anything else that we should know about this? Because I think housing, especially in the United States where millions are going homeless, and then the people who are not homeless have outrageous rent. I pay outrageous rent. So,
Yeah,
Shama, I
I just
appreciate you
went
taking
through a
the time.
whole.
Yeah.
I just went through a whole housing thing. Nick went through a whole housing thing. So Shama, can you kind of lay the groundwork for like what happened to precipitate to even being
Yeah.
here to where you're having this rent control issue go on? If you could speak to that, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle is hardly unique. We're seeing this crisis nationally. We've been talking about it for the last hour. And in Seattle, we've seen one example of that where, for one, the most startling statistic really is the rents in Seattle between 2010 and 2020 almost doubled. This is absolutely stunning.
That's
And
crazy.
yeah, that's completely crazy, and it you can see this playing in people's real lives, and that still you have is from the public hearing I held. I chair the Renters' Rights Committee, Sustainability and Renters' Rights Committee on the Seattle City Council, and
Mm-hmm.
city Democrats, they hate that the law gives me the right to organize these committee meetings in the way I want to, the way I think will benefit working people. So most meetings are in City Hall chambers in the middle of the day. We held this public hearing in Capitol Hill in the community at 6 p.m. And so we had 150 people there, just absolutely, just really like, explaining the dire need for rent control. And obviously, I already mentioned how people are literally in the pipeline from unstable housing to homelessness to dying while you're unsheltered. Um, in addition to that, we also have a whole section of community. CJ and Nick, you mentioned yourselves in this situation where you may not be facing homelessness in any immediate way, but the housing instability you face, having to move multiple times a year,
Right.
there are so many young people who uh, they cannot afford a place of their own unless you're willing to live in a micro apartment with no kitchen, no bathroom of your own. And so most young people I know, actually, they live in group houses. And so, and many of them move multiple times a year, so this it's a very, very difficult situation. And majority of Seattle is now renting, and majority of them support rent control. In fact, you know what, a very important poll was done in 2020 after the pandemic happened, where Washington statewide, 71% of Washington state likely voters support rent control. So that's how much the crisis is developed statewide. So, in other regions, it may not be as acute as Seattle, but relative to what it was, it is a major housing affordability crisis. And in fact, if you look at, so already statewide, there is support for it. And also, if you look at how the crisis affects people, obviously, working class people are affected, low income people are affected the most. But even within that, if you look at how it affects low income and poor people of color, communities of color, it is just gut wrenching. And in fact, the Seattle Times, which is the editorial board, is in no, I mean, it's very much with the Chamber of Commerce and with corporate landlords. But even one of their articles said in 2020, this is a quote: in fast gentrifying Seattle, where there is no type of rent control, renters are vulnerable to steep increases in their monthly payments when the lease is up.
Yeah.
So they're not actually advocating for rent control, but they're noting, which is a lot for them to say, that because of the absence of rent control, this is happening. So what's the context? In Washington state, 42 years ago, the Democrats and Republicans at that time, most of the people who are watching this are probably haven't been alive for 42 years. 42 years ago, the Democrats and Republicans, they came together on behalf of corporate landlords in response to a campaign for rent control at that time in Seattle in
Mm.
1979. They instituted a ban statewide on any municipalities passing their own rent control. And for 42 years, the Democratic establishment has presided over this ban. And one of the insidious tactics that they have used all along is the city Democrats, Seattle City Democrats, giving cover to the state Democrats, and the state Democrats giving Seattle City Democrats cover. So, and so one of the clarifying points we have made is this is one party. it's your party. And whether you're a Seattle Democrat or a Democrat in Olympia, which is the capital of Washington State, you are in a party that has that has ties to corporate landlords. And the ban on rent control is not a neutral act. It is in favor of landlords, corporate landlords. And this is also, an additional, as if this didn't make a overpowering case for rent control. Now we know the ProPublica investigation, which shows that most corporate landlords are actually subscribers or clients of this corporation called RealPage, which has an algorithm which allows corporate landlords to wantonly raise their rates because it eliminates what they call the human factor. Where lawsuits are alleging that corporate landlords have engaged in price fixing, and that has been a big component of the insane rent increases. So it's in this context that we have proposed, my office, Socialist Alternative Worker Strike Back, we have proposed a strong citywide rent control, as you've shown. Yeah, it covers every rental home, no loopholes which allow rent control units to then go back to market rate. So
Wow.
no such loopholes. But it's a trigger law, which means that it will go into effect the moment the state ban is lifted. So it can't go into effect. But why are we doing this? Because it's the same reason that we want Cornell West campaign to succeed, is because we are done waiting for the Democratic Party to act. What they have done is side with corporate landlords in a very open way by upholding that ban. So what we need is to win this, because we know that if we can win this, it will provide giant historic momentum to take our movement to Olympia, to repeal that ban, and then actually make this law take effect. But what are the obstacles here? This is, we have, obviously, there are conservative Democrats, who are openly conservative Democrats, four of them, sorry, who are not going to support this. There are automatic no votes unless there's a real movement that forces them to pay a political price. But you also have progressive Democrats who are self-described progressive Democrats plus my vote. We are the majority of the council, but they themselves are not supporting it. In my committee, one Democrat voted yes with me on this legislation, and Andrew Lewis, who is a self-described progressive and Labor Democrat who's up for re-election. In fact, Tuesday night is election night, I believe, primary night. He voted against this legislation. There is a mistake.
Yes,
Another progressive, she just took a leave of absence. She says she's not going to show up on Tuesday. This is the situation we are in. So we need powerful solidarity. So anybody who's watching this, if you can, if you are in Seattle, you can show up, we need you here in City Hall chambers on Tuesday at 2 p.m. Seattle time. And I also want to put a call out to the Kansas City Tenants Union. If anybody from the KC Tenants Union is watching this, we need you to stand with us too, because if we can win here, we can win nationwide.
Yeah, and Casey Tenants accurately calls out what they call the ethnic cleansing of Black and brown people in Kansas City. And you mentioned during your spill that the rent increases impact Black and brown and disenfranchised people. And I don't know a lot of people know this, but Kansas City has some of the highest percentage of Black people, 3 times more than the nation average. They're around 33%. But the Black population has decreased significantly because Quentin Lucas and Democrats in our area has been they sold out to real estate developers and landlords, and these are the people that Casey Tenants have been fighting. They've been raising rents, especially in poor and disenfranchised communities that they know they're not going to fight back, which led to many Black people who lived here for generations had to be displaced, which is the quoted ethnic cleansing. There were a lot of Black people that were forced to leave because of the cost of living. Not only Black people, obviously, but that is what impacts. That is the gentrification. That is the ethnic cleansing, and driving people out of their homes. That's why Casey Tenants drive that point home, and that's why this is such an important issue to tackle. I want to give Joe Stein in for any thoughts regarding the housing issue and how we can fight back against it.
Oh, as Kshama's talking, I'm thinking we have to put out a press release about this, and Cornell needs to take a stand on it. And
that'd be great.
Kshama, we can be in touch afterwards about how to make this happen.
Please do. We absolutely
like before.
That'd be fantastic.
Today's Thursday, and the vote is on Tuesday. So let's get this out tomorrow. Is like what I'd like to happen. And, you know, this is it, because like Kshama's saying, this is not just Seattle. This is America. You know, this is what it looks like. This is not the exception. This is the rule. This is what's happening all over the place. And we really need a unified fight back. And, you know, I just thank our lucky stars that we have a candidate here who is not shy and, you know, knows no bounds. I mean, he doesn't think what he's doing is courageous. You know, he thinks what he's doing is just what he's supposed to do, you know, in the tradition of Black prophetic power. And, you know, name it, he'll do it. And we need to move.
So maybe that's the good part. That's the good part of him not having any political sort of background.
Oh yeah,
is that he views it this way. So, and that could be a great thing. But I'm loving having this conversation, and now it's resulting in Dr. Cornell West possibly reaching out and helping out with this
that's gonna be great
thing.
Oh
this
yeah,
this is what we
yeah.
This is what we should be doing. Like, this is such the return on something like this is such more better. You have such a better chance than like donating to the Democratic Party. So for those that are watching, this is what you want to be doing. But go ahead. It looks like you were going to chime in again, Dr. Stein.
Yeah, you know, I was just going to say that this is what our kind of advisor teams are about. And I would love to talk to Kshama about that, about, you know, really solidifying that relationship so that you can give us the heads up when stuff is happening in this sector that needs a shot in the arm, and that needs publicity, and, you know, and that needs support. And I would love to be in touch with you about not only this moment on Tuesday, but all the moments, you know, following in the year and a half ahead.
Absolutely, Jill. Yeah, we should definitely be in touch. Yeah. Let's connect offline, and this is exactly what we need to be doing, where we are connecting the various struggles and having Cornell West and the campaign of Dr. West and Jill Stein, you know, all of you running this campaign. I think having that be sort of the force that brings a lot of these struggles together.
Exactly.
Helping to connect in people's minds also why they should be supporting this, even if it's happening in Seattle, as you said.
Oh yeah,
it has national implications. Explaining all of that, I think, Cornel West and also I just want to say, as you were saying, Jill, earlier, the 24/7 seriousness that he has shown, where he's just tirelessly going everywhere. I think that is exactly what will benefit all the ongoing movements.
Yes.
In what way can you speak to that? Because I'm curious, in what way? How does him doing that benefit in from your perspective? How would it benefit? I should say
it benefits in a very specific way, in the sense that every time you speak, and I'm sure, Jill, Dr. Stein, you will relate to this as well yourself, is when you are playing a visible leadership role, like as Jill Stein was as candidate, as Cornel West is doing now, and through our experience in having this position in Seattle, launching Worker Strike Back, sometimes you feel to yourself like a broken record. You feel like, well, I've said this a number of times. Why am I saying this again? But every time you say it, I've always told other people who are playing a public role that every time you speak, imagine that there is somebody listening to you who's not heard you before. So what would you say then? And that is what I mean. When Bernie had such a huge impact, obviously his starting point of having a very strong program of demands was important. In that sense, it was very genuine. But then also hitting his stump speech everywhere he went was important, because if people don't know what the campaign is about, then what they have on offer, as you guys were talking earlier, CJ, Nick, is the garbage from the mainstream media about, oh, he's a spoiler, so that's the alternative. So just going everywhere he can and really hitting his points is crucial. In fact, I should also mention, it's very important. I mean, he's going on all the left broadcasts. That's very important. But he's also not shying away from going on Fox, on CNN, on every mainstream and corporate media show. It is important for him to go, because there are ordinary and genuine people watching these shows. Every time if you as a leftist, you feel I shouldn't go on Fox News, don't forget there are probably Teamster UPS drivers who are listening to the show just because they're driving
Mm-hmm.
hours and hours and they're listening to something, and so there are going to be genuine people no matter where you go, which show you go on, who are listening to you, and that's your audience. Anderson Cooper is not your audience. The people who are
Yes.
watching CNN is your audience, and they need to know what you stand for. And there's another thing component, in answer to your question, CJ, is that
Mm-hmm.
it is important for working people to see leaders on the left uh, being staying on the offensive and not going on the defense. One thing that's been important about Cornel West's media appearances is that he's never backed away from his positions. Like, they try to bait him, they have tried to portray him as a Putin lover. He has never backed away from his anti-war position. Imagine how incredibly important that is. Without the Cornel West campaign, who is the anti-war candidate who claims the anti-war mantle? It's
Right.
Donald Trump. you know
Right.
this is so dangerous for the working class to not have, in the absence of a Cornel West campaign, to not have a genuine left anti-war candidate. That's damaging to the genuine issue of being anti-war and anti-imperialism. So not allowing Donald Trump to grab the mantle of an anti-war candidate and pushing back and never going on the defensive on those points, all of that is important for working people to see, not only for them to see that somebody who believes in what I believe is out there and I'm not alone, but also to feel empowered when somebody on the left uh, it refuses to back down and goes and stays on the offensive. That empowers the people who are watching them, because they recognize that's how we need to fight back.
Yeah, well said. I
Absolutely.
wanna get you guys back in here, but I wanna bring up labor issues before we get you guys out of here. We appreciate you guys' time, but I definitely want to ask you guys about the latest strike happenings. Obviously, there's this UPS tentative deal that's going on, and now with this tentative deal, this kind of show exactly why Kshama Sawant, Dr. Jill Stein, and RBN was railing against Joe Biden and the DSA strikebreakers that broke the rail strike, because you had the exact same scenario, the neoliberal establishment melting down over the possible collapse of the economy, and around July 5th, you had UPS management look at the workers that was demanding more, and they look at them and say, "We gave you all we have." We gave you all you have. There's nothing more. Get back to work. And the UPS workers called their bluff. That was around July 5th. They said, "We have nothing more to give you guys. You are being too unreasonable." So then UPS people went on strike. Now they got 30% pay increase, right? And I want to get your opinion on this, Shama, because I want to show this tweet that came from Worker Strike Back. This is from the Teamsters. I go in order here because I mostly want to get your guys' opinion. Teamsters said, "We changed the game. Teamsters win historic UPS contract." Now, what's important to remember, and this is what Worker Strike Back mentions in this tweet, this is just a tentative agreement, and it's up to the 340,000 UPS Teamsters to decide to accept it or not. Now, this was the right that was denied the rail workers whose strike was ended. Now, they are in a position to decide what's best for themselves, not me. But it's good that workers are in a position where they can possibly say no, and they still have a win anyway. But anyway, that's my intro. I want to get Shama in here, then we get Jill Stein back in here. This is a tweet from Worker Strike Back. I finished reading it out before I get you in here. But it's Teamster. Here it is. Teamster leadership just signed a tentative agreement with UPS, but it's the 340,000 UPS Teamsters who will decide whether to accept it or to vote no and demand more. Workers should be allowed to see the full contract and have a full democratic debate, which I think is an important point that your organization brings up. So I want to pass it to Shama, and then we can go to Jill Stein. I want to give you guys thoughts on this latest development. And I'll show you just one more receipt regarding labor. But go ahead, Sean. What's your thoughts on the latest?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Nick and CJ, for bringing this up, because this is the most important thing that's going on right now. Aside from the Amazon unionizing drive at Amazon's Air Hub at KCVG, and by the way, Jill, we should talk about that as well, because that's a very important thing. The most important union drive is going on there. But as far as the most important contract battle, obviously, without a question, that's UPS right now. And just in reference to that tweet, I believe after that tweet, the Teamster leadership did share the full contract, which is really important that they did that. And so, of course, now the Teamster rank and file are going to be looking at that contract. And just on, and I do have some thoughts about the contract and what Worker Strike Back and Socialist Alternative are advocating for. But on your point about, UPS bosses saying, well, we have no more, we can't actually we can't actually have AC in all the trucks today. We don't have the money to make sure that all workers have a living wage. You don't have the money to make the part-time workers who want to go full-time. We don't have full-time jobs for them. Look at the numbers, right? UPS made $13 billion in profits last year, and that's on top of handing $10 billion to stockholders, to the major stockholders. And where did all that money come from? It came from, obviously, from withholding basic living standards from these hardworking drivers and other workers, at the facilities who are actually doing the work of delivering the packages. It's not the bosses who are doing it. So all the billions of dollars went to the top, not to the workers. And so it's
They
really
had no
important.
air conditioning. To your point, Sean, they were making all that profits. I want you guys to understand the class struggle. They made profits because they denied workers air conditioning. Profits is unstolen labor value. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah,
Sean.
exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, the political pundits, they'll say, oh, well, capitalism is not a zero-sum game. It is a zero-sum game. That's where profits come from. That's the mathematics. That's the mathematics of the economic relationships under capitalism. It's a very straightforward thing. And so what are we seeing here? Obviously, this tentative agreement, as the Teamster leadership is saying, that this is something that they support, but as we said in our tweet and Worker Strike Back, it's actually the rank and file that needs to decide, and we will be supporting the rank and file on this. But just to get into some of the specifics of what is in the contract, I mean, the union leadership is saying that the contract this tentative agreement will end the hated two-tier system, and that's obviously that was the main issue for that, and wages are the main issue for the workers. But what we're seeing here is that multiple tiers are already baked into the massive wage differential between full-time workers and part-time workers, and between drivers and inside workers. The tentative agreement does not create 10,000 new full-time jobs, which is really it's a victory for the UPS executives. And then in addition to that, the tentative agreement, it opens the door to creating a new low-paid tier of part-time workers forced to use their own vehicles to get more hours. I mean, we should actually be fighting to end the so-called personal vehicle driver classification altogether, not allowing UPS to expand it, much less. Because this is just it's a slippery slope. UPS wants to use this type of mechanism to have cheaper and cheaper labor to get more and more billions in profit. So we should, far from allowing them to expand it, we should be demanding that it end in the first place. And then also, the other points are, at last year's the convention of the Teamsters for Democratic Union, TDU convention, Sean O'Brien, the president of the Teamsters, said that the union should agree to Sunday working in order to, quote unquote, keep up with the times. And we don't agree with this, with the union president saying this publicly without consultation with the membership, because the signal it sends is that, you're willing to accept concessions months before negotiations begin. And so the TA, and what we're seeing now is that, the Teamster leadership is that their press release claimed that they gave, quote unquote, zero concessions from the rank and file. But if you look at the actual provisions in the tentative agreement, it would give UPS the right to implement 7-day deliveries anywhere it chooses, with only 45 days notice to the employees. And so this new language gives up the union's right to negotiate over this huge question. And so all of these different points that I've just raised, this is why Workers Strike Back is urging the Teamster rank and file to vote no on the tentative agreement and to join us in the fight for the contract that UPS workers deserve. And so we're calling for that. And in the meantime, we're also urging that the union should not discontinue the practice pickets, that the practice pickets should keep going on. The strike plans need to be concretized, and that community mobilization needs to happen in all the big regions around centers around the country. And so we have to make all this make all these plans go forward and not halt them, because if the workers take decisions even regionally to go on strike, then we need community solidarity to build around them. And then last but not least, I'll just say also that Workers Strike Back is hosting a public meeting on Sunday, July 30th at 3 p.m. Eastern, where rank and file Teamsters will be speaking, and then groups like Teamsters Mobilize and Joe Allen, the author of The Package King, will also be there. So I don't have the registration link with me, but if you go to workerstrikeback.org, you should get the information.
Well, so a lot of great stuff said there by Kshama. Before I get Joe Stein in here, the conversation is about labor. I want to interject this because you have on one end, because the 2024 election campaign is centrally here, you have liberals that say we are in a good economy. The question I have for them, because I view the economy as a bottom down construct. GDP means very little to me. I care about what the workers is doing. How I don't know how they square the concept that we live in we have a good economy with the fact that we have so many workers that wanting to go on strike. The fact that there are so many workers that are upset, that to me is one of the leading indicators that we don't have a good economy. If you had a good economy, why there wouldn't be that many workers striking, right? And one thing I want to mention regarding UPS, even though they got a 30% wage increase, according to estimates, and I heard it from Richard Wolff, around 5 to 6 years, based on the current inflation rate, is going to eat that up. So what do you do then? Better get ready to strike. Mm-hmm. You got to see how labor militancy had to remain. But so I want to get Dr. Stein in here, but you got to see, I'll just read this headline. This is a problem. Biden faces looming strikes that could rock the economy. And even with this new deal, this is a CNN headline, with one major strike averted, the most pro-union president confront labor woes. And one of the more recent strikes that going to happen now is the auto workers that refuse to endorse Joe Biden thus far, and the Biden administration is desperate to stop from striking. Now, last headline I read here, and I want to get your opinions overall on the topic of labor organizing and what you see here, Dr. Stein, but this is one. Wage increases might prove to be an easy win for UAW in automaker contract talk. So the Biden administration don't want the strike to happen, even though the UPS, and this is what the CNN article is referring to, even though the UPS strike is potentially averted, the vote hasn't happened yet, we still have all these workers that are ready to strike. So how can you say you got a good economy when there's so many workers who are upset? You guys see how that don't square with our ideology? They view top-down number, GDP, how much the wealthy is making. No, as far as I'm concerned, if the workers are upset, the economy is not good. But anyway, I know I went on for a while. I want to get Dr. Stein in here. I'm sure you got a lot to say. Any reactions, anything you want to add?
Well, I want to chime into what you just said, Nick. What is this good economy stuff? I mean, who? Good for who? It's good for the top 1% that commands 30% of wealth in the economy. It's not good for the 50% who command 2%. 2% of wealth is what 50% of the population is surviving on, but barely surviving. So, I just don't buy into this nonsense because you had an increase in the GDP from the last quarter that suddenly things are working. They're not working. And, the strikes that are happening all over the place is evidence of that. And that was just really great, Kshama, to hear your analysis of what's missing in, from this, the settlement with UPS. And, just looking back at the last big strike that was suppressed with the Railroad Workers Union. I mean, remember what the situation was there, where you had the most profitable business in the country that's making a 50% profit margin in the year prior, that basically they were spared from having to cut a tiny fraction into their 50% profit margin in order to provide sick days. I mean, that's just like staggering. And this is to a workforce that had already been cut by 30%, where one or two people were basically handling trains that were a mile, 2
Right.
miles long.
2 miles
It's just
long.
mind-boggling. And the workers there are subject to essentially they're constantly on call, so they have absolutely no lives at all. So the hype that, oh, they got their sick days, or they got a couple of their sick days, these issues have not been met at all, and these are really the rule. They are not the exception to the lives of the American worker, which are just being, and workers all over the world, but here, we pretend to be a wealthy and just democracy, and we're an oligarchy, and the rules are being made by the usual suspects, the bankers and big tech and just the rapacious oligarchs are in bed with our major political parties, and they're creating the rules of the game, and workers have nowhere to go. And I think this is another part of that perfect storm. I think this is the biggest engine of that perfect storm, that working people are, have their backs up against the wall and are absolutely desperate. And we need to be supporting this effort right now to break the duopoly, to throw out this system of, colonialism that's exploiting workers right here as part of that colonialism, and, just say no to it across the board and not be intimidated by the, the efforts of the leadership right now in the rapacious oligarchy that is trying to extort people and silence them and just drive them back. It's important, like Alice Walker said, to paraphrase her, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. We have that power right now, above all, coming from workers who do not have a way forward, and who are really undergoing slow torture here in their daily lives. And we all need to stand up together and help workers really lead the way.
I was skeptical when this deal was announced, and it sounds like I was right to be skeptical, because the media, they have to play, and you saw that in the headlines that Nick read. They have to say, "Oh, this strike is not going to happen. It's okay, guys. It's not none of this." So I knew they were going to announce some sort of tentative agreement before the strike deadline, or was approaching, because that's the same strategy they did with the rail strike. And do we remember what happened? Come to find out, they didn't really have a tentative deal. They just said that in order to get them not to strike by that particular deadline. So it sounds like this is sort of the same thing. You have union leadership that want to sell this deal to the rank and file, and you hear their PR arm selling it as if it's over. Like, oh yeah, the deal has been reached. This is over, as if the rank and file does not have to vote on it. And it's my position also that they should vote against this deal. They're talking about all the good stuff that's a part of this, but as Kshama Sawant spoke to, there's a lot of this that is also bad in the long run. So that's what I would say about that. Go ahead, Nick.
They have a ton of power. Like the capitalists are worried about the state of the economy. So if you have maximum power, why set a deal that's not up to par? That's not what rank and file is asking for, and that's exactly what the establishment got away with last time. So I love the suggestion coming from Kshama. I think everyone here is 100% correct. For a second time, we're almost 2 hours in, so I won't get the super chat. CJ, I don't know if you had anything else you want to ask.
Let me, because with this labor, let me get into a couple of things. Ahead. Yeah, let me get into a couple. So this right here, because we're talking about labor, so we have to bring up, we have our labor organizing summit, which is this Saturday, the 29th, from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Kshama will be a part of that, along with Chris Smalls. We're still putting this together, so that possibly we might possibly, if we're able to get Cornell West.
Yeah, we have a Green Party panel scheduled at 7 p.m. Eastern time as well. So that's a new panel that's gonna be added. A lot of great guests. So we probably release schedule here soon. Sorry, go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, no, that's good that you added that. And then we'll talk to you offline, Dr. Stein. But if you're available too, we would love for you to be a part of this. And hopefully it'll remain a day, because our summers are usually a couple of days, but we're trying to make sure to keep this a day. But again, we would love to have people like you, Dr. Stein, on it, along with Kshama Sawant and Chris Hedges. So make sure everybody tune in this Saturday for this event. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things. We're going to have some union people on. We're going to have, talk about organizing from different perspectives. So make sure you tune in for this event this Saturday. Now, before you get to Super Chats, let me ask this closing question before we let our guests go. What, for those that are listening or watching right now who love what we're saying about building power outside of the duopoly, but they've been voting Democrat all this time, and possibly Republican, because we do have some conservatives that watch us, and they love what what we're saying, but they still kind of haven't quite lifted that anchor off of that blue team, off of that red team. And I'll go to you first, Dr. Stein, and then Kshama. What message do you have from them in this moment? What would you say to that person kind of on the fence, and how do we get them to jump on the side of on the right side of history, the right side of humanity? How would you answer that?
I would say consider how your relationship with the Democratic Party is like being in an abusive relationship. And sometimes you just have to put an end to abusive relationships. And that's very hard to do, but you should not be the victim here in this relationship of political power, where you're basically being told to act on behalf of your political partner here, who in this case is abusing you. If you are a working person, if you're someone who needs health care, if you're someone who needs clean air and not to be succumb in a heat wave, if you want a budget that's gonna keep kids out of poverty instead of squandering it all on war contractors and the military industrial complex, you are being abused. The American public is being devastated, especially if you are middle or lower income or poor or of color. If you are a marginalized community, this is not working, above all for you. And don't take marching orders from the political predators who are really destroying our lives and our future. It's really important to rethink this without that kind of that sort of predatory cloud hanging over your head, and the sense that you are being extorted here. You are being bludgeoned into a vote that's hurting you. It's really important to wake up and smell the roses here. The younger you go down the age spectrum, the more people are independent of this kind of hierarchy that's been imposed on us for generations. It's really important to just let go of that and rethink where you are and stand up. As Frederick Douglass says, power concedes nothing without a demand. If we don't make that demand, it's not going to happen. And consider what our trajectory is, whether you're looking at healthcare or our health, which is just suffering incredibly, or the crushing inequality, which gets worse. This is not getting better. None of these things are getting better. They're all getting worse. And the establishment measures its progress in terms of how it might slow down the deterioration of everything our lives depend on. So just forget that, forget the lesser evil, fight for the greater good like our lives depend on it, because they do. And one of the easiest things you can do is stand up and support a political movement that's really genuine and that is working on your behalf.
That's awesome. And Kshama, same question. There's a person that's on the fence that loves everything we're talking about, building power outside of the duopoly. but you just haven't lifted that anchor yet. What is your message to that person?
I would, of course, say some of the things that Dr. Stein has already said, which I won't repeat. I think those are all very, very important points that Jill has already made about why we argue that we need we need to break from the Democratic and Republican parties and have a party of our own as the working class. In addition, maybe one other point could be that if people are specifically not willing to break their ties from the Democratic Party because they're worried about Trump and the rise of right populism, I think um, it's good to remind them that actually we got here in the first place because we don't have any political party that is representing the majority of people. And to the extent that Trump gets any currency from genuine working people, it is very much related to the fact that they feel not that they feel, they are completely unrepresented by the Democratic and Republican Party. And in fact, one of the most wonderful things about having Cornel West for president campaign is that there's actually a genuine left pole of attraction now in the presidential election debate, where the argument that, oh well, if you're against Trump, then support Biden, it can completely be smashed to smithereens because you have Cornel West now. So actually supporting a candidate that you believe in. This is a clip, Jill, before you were here, they played a clip of you responding to a completely disingenuous question from the so-called audience member. And this is what you were talking about. Wouldn't it be good if we could vote for someone and support a campaign that actually represented our aspirations, our needs, the kind of society that we are envisioning? All of that is important. But I think it's also, in addition to all of these points, it's also important to share with people that, look, you may not agree with us on breaking with the Democratic Party, but if you are an ordinary working person and you agree with our overall agenda of fighting for these concrete demands, then it's important that you join us. It doesn't matter yes, it does matter whom you vote for, but if you want to fight alongside UPS Teamsters, if you want to fight alongside Amazon workers who are unionizing, if you want to fight for rent control, I don't care who you voted for. If you want to fight for this, then let's be in this together. Let's unite on the basis of genuine, concrete working class demands.
And can I add just one quick thing?
Absolutely.
And it's really important to just throw out this notion of you guys are spoilers or Cornel West is a spoiler. When did the Democratic Party really begin to hemorrhage its support and representation? It was after Barack Obama gave away the store to Wall Street and threw millions of families out of their home. What happened then? 1,000 state legislators were lost from the Democratic roster. 64 congressional Democratic representatives, something like 12 senators were lost from the Democrats, and somewhere around 13 governors. The Greens had nothing to do with that. Third parties had nothing to do with that. They're just trying to they're trying to voter shame, and they're trying to discredit their opposition. They are scared. Recognize the power that you have right now, and no one is going to do this for us. We are going over the waterfall right now, whether you look at our health, our survival, our schools, our debt, our climate, war, nuclear weapons. We are going over the cliff as we speak. There is no time and there is no potential here for the system to save us. We have to save ourselves. We need to stand up and just reject their BS, forget the lesser evil, fight for the greater good. That's all we have, and that's who we are.
Yeah, well said, Dr. Stein. Just a few super chats I'm gonna get here real quick, and then we can.
I think there's a few questions for you guys for the two of you. That's why we want you here for the super chats, because they are talking to one or the two of you.
Yeah. Our community is always based as always. This was a very enlightening, very enjoyable panel. Definitely one of my favorites I have done in recent memory. So we definitely appreciate you guys for stopping by. Thank you for $5, Sean. Shama will be a great Secretary of Labor for Dr. West. I don't disagree. Imagine her on the campaign trail speaking to working class issues and helping build a bigger movement. And Kshama is doing amazing work now. Everyone has a role in this movement, and I think Shama's role is really powerful right now. But it would be sweet to see that. Not gonna lie, it would be sweet. Anyway, thank you for the $2. Eric, love you, Kshama. Never stop fighting for us. Thank you for super chat. We got a few from Eric here, and this is what we were talking about, Jay Paul. I don't know if you saw the quote I read earlier, Dr. Stein, where Jay Paul said that she's a Biden fan now. Jai Paul is the worst progressive of the bunch, probably why she was made leader. Absolutely. Frauds, hashtag end empire, hashtag Dr. West 2024, hashtag post duopoly. One more from Eric here, I see. Trump and Bernie are both cowards. They both serve the war machine. I don't disagree. Thank you for the $5. And there's Black Floyd. When is someone going to ask Dr. West what is he specifically offering us for our vote? And that's a question that every politician should be forced to answer, right? I think he offering material policy needs that the working class needs, speaking up to the war. But are you convinced? It's up to you to decide.
I think if you put that question back up there, I think
I got you.
And we know Black Floyd. He's
like
out here in Long Beach. Yeah, he's part of the Long Beach chapter of RBN. But this framing, this speaks to, I'll do this and you come vote, and we have to get beyond just that. We need to think of it in terms of building a movement. So is it that he's offering something to us, or he's offering an opportunity or a vehicle to build a movement? Because we can't deal in illusions. I personally, where I'm not thinking this candidacy is going to actually win the White House, but it's part of building a movement. So I just want to make sure, I temper any expectations that I'm addressing. If he wins, of course that is great, but if he wins, it's just the beginning of the fight.
And also
you got Congress, you got donors. Go ahead, Kshama.
Yeah, no, sorry to interrupt, CJ, but that's exactly. I mean, the point about the need to build movements is so central, not only in terms of the framing, as you said, but also, I mean, if hypothetically speaking, if Cornell West, on the basis of the campaign, he's that he's the demands that he's calling for, cancellation of all student debt, Medicare for all, guaranteed quality education and housing, and also, as we were saying earlier, a genuine left anti-war candidate. All of these are important demands that working people should organize around. It's not just that he is talking about it. We have to join this campaign. But furthermore, hypothetically, if a campaign on the basis of these demands on the left actually won, there's not that prospect. And as you said, CJ, that's not what we're here for right now in this campaign. But if that were to actually happen, it's not like somebody like Cornel West can go to the White House and then great things will start happening.
Yes, that's a great
point. Can you imagine the war that the ruling class would absolutely unleash against the working class? So there's no way of avoiding a political battle, a political clash, and that's where we need to ready our forces, and that's why we need the working class to be involved and to be activated. And one of the values of having a campaign like this is to help, sort of generate those forces.
Fantastic answer, Kshama. Feel free to interrupt anytime if you guys want to chime in regarding any of these super chats. Was there anything you want to say, Dr. Stein?
Yeah, just that, for people who've listened to Dr. West, his voice is pretty indistinguishable from what it was before he was a candidate, and in his opening video, his statement is that I have decided, to run for president in order to advance this movement for truth and justice that I've been fighting all my life. And to hear from him, that's what he's saying. He's all about the movement. It's very hard to hear in his speeches that he's even running for office or that he will do this as a president. It's not your conventional, stump speech or politician speech. He's not a politician. He's very, genuinely a devotee of the movement within the tradition of the Black prophetic struggle. and he's doing what he always does. And
Mhm.
I think he sees entirely eye to eye for us. And by the way, I don't speak for him, and I don't officially speak
Right.
for the campaign. Only Cornell West does at this
Mhm.
point. And, but just my impression from what I've been seeing is that this is all about movement building, and it's for the long haul. And it's really important to know this doesn't begin now and it doesn't end on election day. This is about, as Kshama said, this is about really engaging that fight and really advancing our organization and expanding our organization as a movement so that we can keep fighting this.
Yeah, so this
Go
live
ahead.
stream was filled with so many gems, so many great quotes. I would love to see a top 10 quotes of this live stream alone, but this is one of them. Can't have a revolution in a counter-revolutionary party. Dr. Joe Stein dropped that knowledge earlier. Once again, this has been a great conversation. Just one of many great quotes. And True Bear said that's their favorite quote about politics in the last 10 years. Absolutely. That's why the funniest thing I've seen, we did a segment on the Nina Turner, Dr. Cornell West interview, where Nina Turner said, "Why don't you run as a revolutionary Democrat?" And Dr. Cornell West, in a very polite way, said that's extremely oxymoronic. So
I was just thinking that it's an oxymoron.
Oh, we love that. We played that back like 3 times. We love that because he's like our, how you have the anger translator? He's the anger de-escalator. He's the one who translates it into a better way. And I could have said it better myself, but it was great. I love that line.
And I wanted, if I could just throw in quickly,
go ahead.
for people who want to build the political dimension of this movement and who really want to seize this moment, please go to cornellwest24.org and sign up. We have now something like, over 10,000 volunteers who've signed up just since the launch, over 1,000 who are just helping with the ballot access campaign. And those costs are escalating now big time. We expect to do ballot access for $500,000. This, fake centrist corporate political party, No Labels, is planning to do it for $80 million. That sort of shows you the value of a grassroots corporation. So sign up. If you have some spare change to throw in, please do, because we have big expenses we have to meet this week to ensure that we're going to get on the ballot in Nevada and Arizona, which are both just really difficult. Ralph Nader was hit with something like 21 different lawsuits simultaneously in order to throw him off the ballot. And you can be sure that's coming to us as well. So we do need to collect dollars as we go along. And if you have spare change to throw into the pot, you can do that at the website. And thank you so much for making this happen.
If you guys need any motivation, just imagine how terrified shit libs will be if Dr. Cornel West got on every single state ballot.
Yeah.
Now, also imagine how happy they would be if they was able to deny him ballot access. Now, use that as motivation because I don't want them to be like, he only on 28 states. He only on 20 states. I want them to be like, holy shit, Dr. Cornel West is on 48 plus states. Right. Anyway, that's my motivation.
We wanted 50. We wanted 50, and it's ahead of what I've ever seen in the past 2 campaigns, where we got onto as many as 47 ballots for like 95% of voters. We are off to a running start right now. And, just the enthusiasm out there is just off the charts. So just like reading the temperature from that alone, we're going all the way, and we are hitting the ground running. So join us at the website.
The fact that you guys are going on all the way is the reason why Dr. Cornel West is the only serious candidate. I want you guys to realize none of the other candidates that are considered anti-establishment is going all the way. They're going to be done by Super Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Cornel West is going to be there by November. RFK and others going to call it quits after Super Tuesday. You got to see the difference?
And in fact, this is an important point you brought up because, and I would really, I think it would be good for the campaign if Dr. West was to emphasize this even more, is this exact point that he's the only candidate, anti-establishment candidate, on the left, first of all, who's going anti-war candidate on the left, who's going to be running all the way and not going to be endorsing Biden. I think that needs to be. I think Cornel needs to make that explicitly clear. And in fact, that is another thing that they keep asking the corporate media. I think it'll be important for working people to be able to see Dr. West's really strong response over and over again when they ask him, "Are you going to be endorsing Biden?" And he said, "Hell no, no, we're not going to endorse Biden."
Absolutely. Big shout out to Rome, who's been in the audience. Rome is doing great on the ground work for us as always. So big shout out to Rome. And if anyone can help him out with the library, we will appreciate that as well. I have a mutual aid event I'm planning for next month after the Labor Summit. I'm gonna try and raise $1,000 for disenfranchised kids for their school supplies. So that's stay tuned for that. Anyway, a few more super chats. I appreciate you guys' time. This is a great conversation. Just thank you for $10, Darren. A personal request, if I may, please could Dr. Stein and Kshama and Cornel at some point appear on George Galloway? I'll be on that show. Mother of all talk shows. He has a massive audience, covers America and Europe.
This is one of our international community. As you can see, the dollar, I think they're in as a pound. I think they're in money. So we have a lot of audience that watches us overseas. So they would like to see you because he is overseas. So they would like to see
George
you.
Galloway is a titan over there, especially among left independent media. So definitely it'd be great if we can get you guys on there. Thank you for the $4.99, Marcos. This conversation is powerful, motivating, and provides direction. Thank you all for a substantive discourse. Absolutely. Like I said, this is one of my favorite panel discussions we had in quite some time. I'm confident to say that. Thank you for the $5, Ryan. This contract is not good, as Kshama was saying. I worked there and nobody's happy with it. That's all I had to hear. Because I'm like, if management and capital said the deal is good versus the workers saying not bad, where's the question? It's easy what side I'm gonna pick. Are you gonna pick the capitalists? Or are you gonna pick the workers who say it's not good? I don't know why there's ever confusion about that. Thank you for the $5, ad kid. Salute to Kshama Sawant for all you teach us. Much respect to Dr. Jill Stein. Loves you, RBN crew. Absolutely. Thank you for the $5, ad kid. I showed this one earlier, solidarity. Thank you from Katie Nick. I put that one up earlier as well. Just a few more here. Appreciate the support, guys. Thank you for $4.99, Bryce. Keep up the great work, maybe Nick and CJ. Thanks, Dr. Jill Stein and Kshama, for stopping through. We definitely appreciate your time. Very thought-provoking conversation. And we still got a lot more. Like I view this as the pre-show, the real start of the Labor Organizer Summit. This is like the hype launch show, I think. Anyway, thank you for the $5, ARJ. Bourgeoisie America is doing just fine. Joe Kaplan Scarborough, duopoly propagandist. Yeah, he's the one that said, "Stop complaining. America is doing just great." And I'm like, man, that's a very, very powerful campaign strategy that you guys have. Intercepting things are great. Leading with the millionaire. That's a great strategy. It's gonna work great. This is our brother Anthony Zinkis. You guys can check him out on RBN on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. We need to demand a $25 wage. $15 was our demand 10 years ago. Zank is also a great Twitter account to follow, always dropping great tweets.
Yeah, and he's a professor. It's Professor Anthony Zank. He's a professor over at Columbia University.
Wow.
Absolutely. Thank you for the $10, Zank. Just a few more. We almost done. Thank you for the $2, Leon. Tell Cornel to stop saying he won't split election. I'm one of the people that say, who cares? And that was just I said. We wasn't here when we played the intro clip where they said, well, what if we get Donald Trump? He's like, what if we get Hillary Clinton? So that should be our message. I think that's what Leon is saying here. So thank you. Just two more here, and we cut it off at the 2. I don't want to no shade or anyone, but we'll cut it off after the next 2. Thank you for the $2, John Cena, powerful name. Possible it is Cornel to be on the
Virginia ballot.
Virginia ballot.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Sign up at our website and help.
Yeah, I hope we can get on. I live in Missouri. I had the pleasure of voting for Jill Stein, and we always had Greens on our ballot. I want to get as many comrades the opportunity to vote Greens as possible, so that'd be great. Last super chat of the day. Thank you for $5. Alice, great. I agree. Very
Mhm.
thought provoking. Thank you for
Yeah.
the super chats. I want to pass it to Shama for last thoughts, and now pass it to Dr. Stein. Thank you for sticking in here with us. This was a fantastic conversation.
Let me say
Go ahead,
something
CJ, go ahead.
before our guests give their last words. In the same way that we have periodic conversations with Dr. Cornell West, it's very good. We would love to extend the same thing to both of you, having the four of us in conversation, maybe once every while. We'll reach out to do this,
Yeah.
because we want to not make this a one-time conversation about building. If we're trying to really build, we got to have a continuous conversation, always
Absolutely.
going back to this well of talking about building power outside of the duopoly. So just giving you a heads up, we will be, part 2 of this conversation, part 3 will be coming in the future. Go ahead, Nick, if you want to.
I'll pass this to Shaw says Shama first, and then we go Dr. Stein to wrap us up. Just for
Well,
last thoughts.
yeah. First of all, yeah, just on what CJ just said, absolutely, that would be a real pleasure and honor if we are able to do this. And I totally agree. We need to do this. This whole conversation itself is part of building that movement. And we're not just a talk shop. We're discussing these things because these are important to discuss, important to have this kind of meeting ground where we can talk about what are the next steps concretely, what is the vision for the future, all of that. So absolutely will be my pleasure to join you all three of you again. And then just lastly, I would say that for people who are watching this and you want to you want to be part of some organizing effort, obviously, I would say, yeah, donate to the Cornell West campaign. It's very, very important. But also check out workerstrikeback.org. If you want to build Worker Strike Back as an organizing campaign in your city, and we don't already have someone there, make sure you write to us. Even otherwise, just write to us if you're interested in the idea of Worker Strike Back. As some of you may know already, and we talked about this in one of the previous shows. Worker Strike Back, to one of your super chats point, we are calling for a $25 an hour minimum wage because that is what's needed. That's the minimum that's needed. $15 an hour was a huge victory, but that was 10 years ago. And we are calling for unionizing all workplaces and for Medicare for all, a fight against oppression, and also for a new party for working people. So if all of this sounds like something that you are thinking about and it's keeping you awake at night, then join Worker Strike Back. If you go beyond that and also agree with us about socialism, then get in touch with socialistalternative.org. We are part of Worker Strike Back, but joining Worker Strike Back and becoming a part of Worker Strike Back doesn't mean you have to be a socialist. So it depends on where you are. Make sure you get involved, though, one way or another.
That's the point of all these conversations. We have fun on here. We educate, but everything I do is to try to spur you guys into change. Dr. Cornel West, as I mentioned before, is not here to save us. He should inspire you to get involved more. Like he should make you want to light the spark for you to see what you can do in the movement, whether it's being someone who work a lot and fund the movement or whatever. So it's important that we get involved in whatever capacity that we have, any capacity. But so make sure you got to check out Worker Strike Back and Socialist Alternative. I met a lot of them earlier this year when I was in Seattle. A lot of great, smart, extremely well-intentioned people. That's for damn sure. So I'll pass it to Dr. Stein. Give your last thoughts, and you also can kind of give your final thoughts. I know you wanted to share some more information on Dr. West. Any final thoughts you have on the campaign or the overall conversation, Dr. Stein?
Yeah, I'll just say, the campaign is just getting started, and this is that perfect storm, and we cannot give the predatory political powers a pass. Movements are the drivers. Social movements in the street are the real engines of social change. But as part of that, we cannot give them a pass in the halls of power. We have to challenge them power concedes nothing without a demand. We have to bring that demand into the voting booth. So I think, this is a match made in heaven, and the workers, I think workers' struggle, labor struggle is really the, historic. It is the historic driver. And for us to be working together as a political campaign and a social movement, I think we are an unstoppable force. We are not going away. This fight is here for the long haul, and it will not be an easy fight, but we have nowhere else to go. And we have
Let me say,
our lives to save here. Go ahead.
Sorry, but I just want to say that I'm extremely happy that you have some sort of influence or some sort of role with the Dr. Cornell West campaign. I'm not going to force you to comment, but I said months ago that I was extremely displeased with the Howie Hawkins wing of the Green Party. So just seeing that not only the Joe Stein, I said months ago, once again, you don't have to comment if you don't want to. I said the Green Party needs to ditch the Howie wing and embrace the Joe Stein wing. And seeing that you involved with Dr. Cornel West, that's a great sign, because the Howie direction was going to kill the party. Now it's the exact opposite, where instead of the party being dead, which Howie left, now there's a lot of energy. That's why I'm glad to see that you're part of it. But anyway, you don't have to comment on that, but I'm just glad to see that. But anyway, sorry, you can finish.
Yeah, no, I do want to acknowledge that, because I feel like the party has come roaring back around this campaign now. And even before this campaign, around the war, the party had a real kind of come to Jesus moment here. Not even just a moment, but there was a lot of discussion about what position we were going to take about the war in Ukraine. And the last vote, you had Howie's position. There were about 7 votes in favor of that. And there were about 90 votes in favor of basically, no weapons for Ukraine, that we need to really shut down the war and not throw, a flamethrower into that war by basically just intensifying the conflict. So that got straightened out. Now that is pretty much settled stuff. And there's enormous energy and enthusiasm, and people are signing up right and left to be a part of the party. And one thing that Dr. West is doing is, building with the Green Party, but also building with other compatible left people-powered movements. So we need a party, we need a party for all of us, and we need to make that as broad and inclusive as we possibly can. I've been involved with the Green Party. I think Kshama was a part of this too, a group called Left Elect, which got started like back in, I think, 2014 or so. And then when Bernie launched his campaign, it kind of like, totally trashed that whole movement. Everybody was like, oh, wow, let's go to the Bernie movement. But, I think people have learned a lot now, and they see that we really need a unified struggle. And there'll be a lot of, strategy to figuring out how we make that happen. But at the end of the day, we have some powerful people-powered parties. And the more we can align ourselves, first of all, in the street, and in the movements, the more we're going to converge here and become an unstoppable force. And I'm really looking forward to, blazing that trail together.
Yeah. And I'm looking forward to the next time we can come together and have a conversation. Because we can go all day on this, because it's always fun having these conversations with you guys. So what I said, CJ, I'm gonna pop you guys out. Thank you guys for making time for us today as well. And CJ, I'll pass it to you for announcements. We also have against Kshama and Jill.
Thank you again for joining us, and we're gonna play the same video we started with Dr. Stein, so stick around for that. But as far as the announcements, as far as the announcements, make sure you check out our website, revolutionaryblackoutnetwork.com. Also, if you're able to contribute, if you're able to support us, make sure Patreon is the best way to support us. So make sure you do that. And it looks like Dr. Stein is sticking around to watch the video. So good. You didn't see this in the beginning. This is one of your classics here, Dr. Stein. But that guy, this guy is no way just a regular guy that's answering a question. He's a plant, and you can see it in his face when Dr. Stein answers. You see a lot of tails in his face just hearing what you're saying. So let's listen to this video once again. Again, thank you for joining us for this great conversation that we had. Hit that like button on your way out, and let's listen to this video once again. Dr. Stein.
Dr. Stein, given the way our political system works, effectively you could help Donald Trump like Ralph Nader helped George Bush in 2000. How could you sleep at night?
I will have trouble sleeping at night if Donald Trump is elected. I will also have trouble sleeping at night if Hillary Clinton is elected. And as despicable as Donald Trump's words are, I find Hillary Clinton's actions and track record is very troubling. So Donald Trump, bashes immigrants and is a xenophobic and racist loudmouth. But Hillary Clinton, has been promoting these wars that have killed 1 million Black and brown people in Iraq, for example. The Democratic Party has become the party of deportation and detentions and night raids with, millions of people deported under Barack Obama. Some of them include the refugees from Honduras, where Hillary Clinton gave the thumbs up to a coup from which thousands of people have been fleeing who have not been welcomed into this country. And Hillary, in fact, has supported many of the White House policies of deportation and detentions. On, the issue of nuclear war, I am very concerned about trouble breaking out in Syria in this air war that Hillary is threatening to have. So, as disturbing as Donald Trump's talk is, I find Hillary Clinton's track record is actually very much of concern too. This politics of fear that tells you you've got to vote against the person you most dislike or the person you are most afraid of, that politics of fear has a track record. Because a lot of people have been, that's been like the prevailing mythology. You got to vote your fears, not your values. And what has that delivered? All the reasons you're told to vote for the lesser evil, because you didn't want the expanding wars, you didn't want the meltdown of the climate or the Wall Street bailouts or the deportation of immigrants. That's exactly what we've gotten by allowing ourselves to be silenced. So in my view, we need to reject the lesser evil and fight for the greater good, like our lives depend on it, because in fact they do.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis appears to be trying to distance himself